I've been looking for the breaking point on this instacker. How much cost could I cut out of the build before it fell apart, and its ability to handle the endgame content? Today I bring to you a build solely put together via thrift shopping and garage sale bargaining. I let go of almost every luxury possible in the name of savings. I considered every purchase I made multiple times, always asking myself, but can I get something cheaper? Something with a little less spice, a little less nice, but at the low cost of borderlining on free. At the end of my long budget shopping spree session, I had an entirely new set of instacking gear for the price of 3.3x. And I tested it with a full rotation of the formed to match my tests from the more lucrative variants of the build. And the cracks, they started to show. The 3.3x version was capable of doing most of the endgame content, but unlike the higher budget versions, it was a lot less comfortable. We had lost a lot of our defenses in going from the 50x variant to the 14x variant, but fortunately, at the 14x variant, we still had enough DPS to mostly ignore the loss in defenses because we could kill things before they had a chance to fight back. But going all the way down to the 3x version of the build, our damage was cut harshly enough to give monsters a lot more ample time than I would like for them to attack us, which highlighted the defense we had lost earlier, where previously it was less noticeable. You'll notice in this form fight, we lost the DPS threshold necessary to kill the initial 2 guardians before the next 2 spawned. The fight all of a sudden becomes much harder in this scenario, as we can be punished by all the guardians at once rather than only having to fight 2 at a time, and they're easier to dodge in that scenario. It highlights the weaknesses in our defense on this budget, because when we're not able to just DPS the boss, they get to fight back, they can take us out pretty quickly. In the end, it might be a fight we can still finish, but it is the opposite of comfortable in my opinion, and it's bordering on something we could brick with a few too many misplays. From the couple of hours of playtesting I did with this version of the build, I found it's adequate to do most of the content, but it's a lot less forgiving, because the moment I let my guard down to loot, or I'm not paying close attention to extended on-death effects, I'm looking at you, Delirium, man, screw on-death effects, by the way, that things like these could result in fast deaths that didn't feel great while playing. I personally like to build a character with a certain threshold of defenses that lead to a more, lenient, relaxed playstyle where I get less tilted, and I don't believe at this budget it really meets that threshold. There was too much random, oh, you're dead now because you weren't paying attention, because you weren't moving, that stuff doesn't feel great. I will leave it up to you always to make your own decisions about whether you want to play at this budget level or not. But I just thought I should share my 2 cents that at this cost, there definitely starts to become some friction for feels goodness of the build just because of the squishiness and the not being able to instant DPS the monsters and them having the chance to fight back. Overall, even with the rough edges in survivability and damage, the build starts to show at 3x budget. I am still very happy with the performance of this build overall. And I was surprised it would even be viable for some endgame boss fights at this currency level, because that's really strict on the budget. I will try to quickly break down the corners I cut on this character in-game, so stay tuned. Alright, now that we're in game, I kind of want to break down my approach to cutting the budget all the way down to as cheap as we were able to do it. Now, the approach can revolve around one term I like to use. I call it thrift shopping. It's where you go on PoE Trade, you set up a lot of filters with count searches. You basically search for an item that has 1 to 3 desirable mods, and then you scroll through looking to see if you can find items that maybe have 1 more useful mod or another open affix or something like that, and then you can benchcraft on it. You're basically using the trade site to get you gear that's most likely going to be a lot better than you can craft for the price, and you're just snagging sort of the cheapest stuff around, and that's pretty much what I did. I can show you a little bit of an example of what I'm talking about here in terms of using count filters and stuff. But for me, say I wanted intelligence and I wanted WED on my ring, I have those set up to always search for those. And then I have something like this, like a count search, where I'm searching for one other desirable affix, like a res of 30 or more, and accuracy. So that way, whenever I search this, I'm getting a ring that has 3 desirable affixes, and I'll just scroll through and I'll look for an item that has maybe an extra mod on top of it, so maybe we can get a ring with 4 desirable affixes, maybe an open affix, stuff like that. You can even change the search as well. You can do a count filter 1, you can go for an empty prefix or an empty suffix. This will give you less rings. You see we went from 400 rings to 58. Ultimately, I like to search sometimes for rings that have full affixes and just take some YOLO and nulls, because a lot of times the best items have full affixes. We took out 350 items from the search by specifying, hey, we want at least one open prefix or one open suffix. And so a lot of times I don't necessarily like to do this unless I'm just trying to get a quick and dirty fast item that I can just craft an affix on that I need. Like, for example, this ring here, it's got intelligence, it's got accuracy, it's got lightning res, it's got wed. I would take the chance, I'd buy this ring and chuck a random null at it. There's about a 33% chance we remove mana or life, which are both mods I don't really care about as an instacker, and then I could go in and craft a prefix. I'd take the 7C and null gamble that we make this into a 5 mod ring, stuff like that I like to try to go for. So that's what I mean when I say thrift shopping. That's kind of what I did to fund majority of this gear, is I went around shopping on a budget, specifically just trying to find things that work and were decent. Here, let me give you a quick show. I kept track of all the stuff I bought. You can kind of see as you go down the list, most of this stuff is 30C or less. There's a few items that I paid a little bit more than 30C, like a medium cluster here and there. But for the most part, I try to keep it, most items I try to keep below 10C, and then a few items I had to go a little bit over. For example, the wand, just looking for wands with the base mod of the lightning damage per int. I think they were like 50, 60C at the base cost. So what I ended up doing is I bought an imbued wand, and I used metallic fossils on it. It was roughly on average a 60C cost, but the reality is you could get a wand that's the correct base, which will ultimately be a lot better than paying 50C to have a wand that has a base attack rate of 1.2 versus 1.5 from the imbued wand. It's a big difference. It's like having a T1 attack roll on the wand already type of thing. And then I was just hoping that I could get either an open suffix to craft crit chance or an open prefix, and what I got was full suffixes, but I had crit chance on it, so I was like, that's decent, and I crafted pen. That's what I did for the wand, just throwing some metallics on it. This is like at the very budget end, I would say do this. If you're not, like, if you want to be a little bit higher end, you could go the route of alt spamming to get the lightning mod, and then do a augment regal, then do ferric wolf alphas to put the mods onto the prefix pool, so that way you can multi-mod crit chance and attack speed. That'd be like a 3x, 3.5x craft to go for a mid-range wand before you go for the high-end awakener or variant of the wand, I would say. But yeah, as you can see, try to keep everything as cheap as possible. Just shopping around for items that worked between our shield, our helmet, our body armor, all these things. I try to keep it cheap. One of the other ways I tried to save money is I tried to buy a talisman that already had vengeant cascade on it. This cost me 30C. It's a fair amount worse than buying a synthesized amulet, but it saved us 90C and having to use the 2 golden oils to anoint on vengeant cascade. There's stuff like that where we saved some money doing it, but we ultimately have strictly a lot worse items. There's other scenarios where, for my large clusters, for example, I just bought 2 notable clusters. These were like 20C to buy. If I was to self-craft these, I think previously when I did it, it was like a 60 chaos on average craft to get a 3 notable thing, and the base jewels for level 50 to 67 were only about 10C or so. So I'm saving 50C doing the 2 notable thing, but I'm losing a lot of power. That 50C could be an entire opportunistic fusilage, which is 50% crit chance, 35% damage. To trade 50C for that amount of stats is very worth it very early on. I wouldn't really recommend going for a 2 notable jewel, but I was just trying to do everything as strictly on the budget as possible to see if I went potato with all the currency, with all the costs and this stuff, could it still work? And it technically still did. Like, we were able to do Maven, which I'm going to showcase after the fact. I will leave that at the end of the video. And we were able to do the formed, but it wasn't pretty. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't clean, you know? And maybe that's just a part of what you got to accept. If you're at this budget level on a character, most likely you're not going to be able to do the endgame content cleanly unless you have a very strong out of the gate build that has some great mechanics going for it. For the most part, this level of budget, you shouldn't even really expect to do the endgame content usually for the most part. So I guess even on that end, I was happy with it. That's pretty much all I did is I just budget bought things. There were a couple things, like I bought a blank 6-link Val Regalia for 20C, and then I just threw a couple dense fossils at it, hit okay, yes, and I just said that's good enough. For the helmet, I bought this is like a tier 3, tier 4 base with power siphon projectiles for 25C. Just threw a couple dents at it, said that's good enough, crafted a res. I moved on with my life. And that's what I did for most of these things. We took out a whole bunch of costs, like 10x from the previous version, maybe even a little bit more, and it shows. It definitely shows we took out some currency. I'm overall, though, very happy I was still able to do content with this level of budget. I really am. Anyways, hope you guys like to see what this build looks like on absolutely bare bones gear. I don't think I would ever want to take it a level lower than this, because I think at that point for sure it would be scrapped. It wouldn't be good enough to do content. And I will close you guys out with a video of this setup doing Maven, so that way you can get an idea of, okay, if I really had absolutely no budget, this is what I could expect in terms of survivability, in terms of damage, stuff like that, if you're really going at the strictest level of budget. So I'll finish the video up with that. Before I go, I just want to say I'll be working on the full guide for this video, which will have basically gear progression, leveling trees. Well, leveling trees will be kind of scuffed because I don't recommend leveling this build, but I'll address that in the guide video. And hopefully that'll be a all-inclusive information to give you a good idea of how to build the character, how to craft gear, all that sorts of stuff. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching the video. As always, enjoy the Maven fight. I will catch you later. Peace out.
living toy must enjoy our content.